The old house at the end of the dirt road seemed like a dream come true for the Mitchell family. With its rustic facade, surrounded by dense forests and the promise of a fresh start away from the city's chaos, it looked like the perfect place to rebuild their lives. Jack and Emily Mitchell, along with their children, Sarah and Luke, were eager to move into their new home. From the moment they arrived, the atmosphere was palpable. The wind seemed to whisper through the ancient trees, and shadows danced around, cast by the flickering twilight. But despite the initial unease, the family settled in, determined to ignore the unsettling feeling of being watched. On the first night, Emily woke up to an indistinct whisper. She looked around the room but saw nothing beyond the deep shadows. Must have been my imagination, she thought, lying back down. However, the whispers continued, growing clearer and closer each night. The next morning, during breakfast, Sarah mentioned the noises she heard during the night. It sounded like voices, Mom, really quiet, she said, her big eyes full of fear. Jack tried to reassure his daughter, blaming the sounds on the forest animals, but the look on Emily's face showed that she, too, had heard the whispers. Days turned into weeks, and the unease grew. Each family member, at some point, heard the whispers. They came at night, bringing a rising sense of terror. Jack decided to investigate the house's history, hoping to find a rational explanation. In the small-town library, he found old records of the property. He discovered that the house had belonged to a family in the 19th century. The youngest daughter, Isabel, had mysteriously disappeared, and the grief-stricken mother had hanged herself in the attic. Since then, the house had been abandoned, and rumors of hauntings spread among the locals. That night, Jack shared his findings with Emily. The fear in her eyes confirmed that the whispers were not their imagination. They decided to seek help. They contacted a local priest, Father Anthony, known for dealing with the supernatural. The priest arrived at the house, bringing candles and holy water. "Evil resides here," he said upon entering the living room. "There are spirits that have not found peace." He began to pray, sprinkling holy water throughout the rooms. But when he reached the attic, where the previous owner had committed suicide, the whispers turned to screams. An invisible force hurled the priest against the wall, and the lights went out. Emily screamed, rushing to help, but was stopped by a shadow that materialized before her. It was a tall, dark figure with eyes glowing like embers. "You are not welcome here," the entity whispered, its voice an echo of agony. The family fled the house, terrified. The figure followed them to the door, disappearing as soon as they crossed the threshold. Outside, in the cold night air, Father Anthony regained consciousness. "We need more help," he said, his voice trembling. "This evil is ancient and powerful." In the following days, the priest returned with 2 other clergymen, all prepared to perform an exorcism. The Mitchells, determined to reclaim their home, agreed to participate in the ritual. Upon re-entering the house, they felt the weight of the darkness. The air was icy, and the whispers, now louder, echoed through the halls. The priest began to pray, and the house reacted violently. Objects were thrown, doors slammed, and the walls trembled. The shadowy figure appeared again, trying to stop the ritual. "She cannot be freed," the entity cried, as the priests continued to exorcise the evil. With one final desperate prayer, the figure began to fade, the screams turning into whispers, and the whispers into silence. The house fell quiet, as if exhaling a sigh of relief. But the peace was only superficial. That night, as the family tried to sleep, the whispers returned, softer, closer. Sarah, now awake, looked towards her bedroom door and saw a girl, pale and sad. "Help me," the girl whispered, her voice ghostly. "She is still here." The truth hit them like a cold shock. The exorcism had not freed Isabel, but rather the malevolent entity that had trapped her. Isabel was still trapped, a lost soul seeking help. The whispers were her cries for aid. The family decided to make one final attempt. Under Father Anthony's guidance, they performed a ritual of release, invoking peace and light for Isabel's soul. At the end of the ritual, a soft light enveloped the house, and Isabel's figure appeared once more. This time, she smiled. "Thank you," she whispered before disappearing in an ethereal glow. The house was finally silent. The Mitchells remained in the house, now at peace, but they would never forget the whispers in the dark. They knew they had touched the threshold between the living and the dead, and that somewhere, voices still whispered, waiting to be heard. As time passed, the house remained quiet, but the memories of the frightening events never faded. Jack and Emily, determined to understand more about what had happened, began to delve deeper into the house's past. They discovered that Isabel's mother, before her tragic end, was known for practicing occultism. The diary she had left behind revealed strange rituals and invocations she believed would bring her daughter back. Instead, it seemed to have opened a portal to something far darker and more malevolent. One night, while Emily was poring over the old diaries in the library, a cold breeze swept through the room, turning the pages on their own. She heard a whisper, clearer than ever. She never left. A chill ran down her spine, and she called for Jack. The two spent the night reading and rereading the diaries, trying to understand what had truly happened. They found a passage describing a closing ritual, something Isabel's mother had never completed. This ritual, if performed correctly, could close the portal and finally bring peace to the tormented souls. The next day, Jack contacted Father Anthony again, explaining the new discovery. The priest agreed to help, although he warned that this would be an extremely dangerous ritual. They decided to perform the ritual the following night, exactly at midnight, in the attic where it all began. As the night approached, the tension in the house was palpable. The family gathered in the living room, waiting for the right moment. When the clock finally struck midnight, they ascended together to the attic. The darkness was oppressive, and the air was as cold as ice. Father Anthony began to recite the words of the ritual, while Jack and Emily held lit candles. The shadows around them seemed to writhe, as if something was drawing near. The whispers started again, louder and more desperate this time. "Leave, you are not welcome here," the voices echoed, trying to distract and scare them. But the priest continued, his voice firm and unwavering. The walls began to shake, and an invisible force tried to extinguish the candles, but Jack and Emily held them steady. A dark figure began to form in the center of the attic, its eyes burning with deep and ancient hatred. "You will never get rid of me," the figure roared, its voice a chorus of agony. But with the final words of the ritual, a bright light filled the attic, and the figure screamed in pain before being sucked into the floor, leaving only an eerie silence. The house, at last, seemed at peace. The Mitchells descended the stairs, exhausted but relieved. Father Anthony blessed the house one last time before leaving, promising to return if they ever needed more help. The family knew they had faced something truly terrifying, but they also knew they had prevailed. As the days passed, the house felt more welcoming. The children resumed playing without fear, and the nights were calm and quiet. Jack and Emily, now aware of their strength as a family, lived each day with gratitude and love. One night, while Emily was preparing dinner, she heard a soft laugh. She turned and saw Sarah, staring intently at the hallway. "What is it, sweetheart?" she asked. Sarah just smiled and pointed. "The girl said thank you," she said before going back to play. Emily felt a shiver, but this time, not from fear. There was something comforting about the idea that Isabel had finally found peace. She looked at Jack, who had also heard the conversation, and they shared a look of mutual understanding. The house was truly theirs now, but not everything remained calm. A few months after the closing ritual, small signs that something was still not right began to appear. It was as if the house was breathing, its walls whispering ancient secrets. One night, Luke woke up in a cold sweat. He had had a terrible nightmare. A dark figure was following him through the house's hallways, whispering his name. He tried to tell his parents, but Jack and Emily, exhausted and wanting to believe that everything was fine, said it was just a dream. But Luke's dreams continued, becoming more vivid each time. He described the figure in detail, tall, hooded, with glowing red eyes. "She's coming back," he said, convinced that something terrible was about to happen. Jack and Emily, increasingly worried, decided to seek help outside the town. They found a renowned medium, Clara, who agreed to visit the house. Upon arrival, Clara immediately sensed the dark presence. "There is something here that shouldn't be," she said, her eyes closed in concentration. With Clara's help, they discovered that the portal opened by Isabel's mother had never been fully closed. The entity haunting the house had deep roots in the earth, feeding off the fear and pain generated over the years. Clara suggested a more powerful ritual, one that required the active participation of the entire family. They would need to face their fears and confront the entity directly. The preparation for the ritual was intense, with each family member learning to protect their mind and spirit. On the night of the ritual, the house was in a state of anxious expectation. Candles were lit in every room, and protective symbols were drawn on the doors and windows. Clara led the family to the attic, the epicenter of the dark energy. The ritual began with ancient chants, words that seemed to vibrate within the very fabric of reality. The shadows writhed, and the whispers turned into deafening screams. The dark figure appeared, more powerful and furious than ever. "You will never defeat me," the entity roared. But the family was united, and with Clara's guidance, they channeled their energies to expel the entity. It was a battle of wills, a struggle that seemed to last an eternity. At the most critical moment, Luke, the youngest and most vulnerable, stepped forward. "Go away," he shouted, his voice full of courage and determination. Light emanated from the center of the circle, enveloping the dark figure. With one final scream of agony, the entity was ripped from the house, sucked back into the abyss from whence it came. The silence that followed was absolute, a calm the family had never experienced before. At last, the house was free. The Mitchells descended the stairs, exhausted but triumphant. Clara assured them that the portal was closed for good, and the entity would not return. The family knew they had faced an ancient and powerful evil, but they also knew that together they were unbreakable. The days that followed were of true peace. The house, once haunted and filled with pain, was now a home. The children played without fear, and the nights were peaceful and serene. Jack and Emily, now aware of the strength they possessed as a family, lived each day with gratitude and love. But even in peace, they would never forget the whispers in the dark. They knew they had touched the threshold between the living and the dead, and that somewhere, other voices still waited to be heard. A year after the terrifying events, the Mitchell family decided to completely renovate the house. They wanted to transform the space that once brought so much fear into a place full of life and joy. During the renovations, they discovered a secret room in the basement, hidden behind a false wall. Inside the room, there were old books of magic and strange artifacts. Among them was a diary belonging to Isabel's mother. In it, they found that she had made a pact with a malevolent entity to bring her daughter back. The pact, however, had gone wrong, trapping Isabel and the entity in the house. Reading the diary revealed that the entity still had a fragment of its essence trapped in the house. Until it was removed, there would always be a risk of its return. With Clara's help, the family performed one final ritual, burning the diary and the artifacts in the center of the secret room, chanting purification incantations. When the fire finally died down, the house felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. Emily looked at Jack and said, "Now, I think we're finally free." The Mitchells completed the renovations, and over the years, the house became a symbol of overcoming for the family. The story of Isabel and the whispers in the dark became a distant memory, a tale told on winter nights around the fireplace, a reminder of what they had faced and conquered together. And so, in the house where shadows once danced and whispers terrorized, there was now only laughter, love, and the certainty that, united, they had nothing to fear. The end. Thank you for listening to Whispers in the Dark, true paranormal horror stories. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more spine-chilling tales, please subscribe to our channel, Echoes of Darkness Tales. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment with your thoughts or any personal ghost stories you'd like to share, and ring the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new story. Your support helps us bring more eerie tales to life. Stay tuned, and remember, the darkness may be closer than you think. It was a cold autumn night when four friends, Mike, Jake, Lisa, and Julia, decided to take a trip to an isolated country house. They wanted to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and enjoy a quiet weekend. The house, owned by Mike's family, had been abandoned for years, but still had a rustic charm that promised a unique experience. They arrived at dusk, and the house's atmosphere quickly enveloped them. The old building, surrounded by dense forest, seemed frozen in time. As they entered, they were greeted by the smell of mold and old wood. Lisa, with her usual sense of humor, joked, "This looks like the perfect setting for a horror movie." Little did they know her words would foreshadow what was to come. On the first night, as they settled into their rooms, Mike heard heavy footsteps coming from upstairs. Thinking it was one of the friends, he went up to check but found no one. The feeling of being watched followed him back to his room. "It must be my imagination," he murmured to himself. During dinner, Jake mentioned he felt a strange presence in the hallway. "It was like someone was watching me," he said, trying to laugh it off. Everyone chuckled, but the nervousness was palpable. As the night went on, they decided to go to bed early, exhausted from the trip. In the middle of the night, Julia woke up to a cold breath in her ear. She opened her eyes and saw a misty figure at the foot of her bed. It was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, with a vacant look. Julia tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving Julia in shock. The next morning, Julia told her friends what she had seen. Lisa, ever the skeptic, said it was probably just a dream. But Mike and Jake felt something was wrong. They decided to investigate the house's history, hoping to find some explanation. They went to the nearby town and visited the local library. Among the old records, they discovered that the house had belonged to a wealthy family in the 19th century. The eldest daughter, Isabel, was found dead in her room under mysterious circumstances. Since then, the house had a reputation for being haunted. Returning to the house, the group was more alert to any signs of paranormal activity. That night, during a storytelling session, the temperature dropped drastically. The candles suddenly went out, plunging everyone into darkness. Lisa tried to relight them, but was interrupted by the sound of sobbing coming from the hallway. Following the sound, they found a young woman in a white dress sitting on the floor, crying. Mike tried to approach, but the figure vanished into thin air. Panic set in among the group. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, his voice trembling. But the road to town was blocked by a sudden storm. They were trapped. They decided to spend the night in the living room together. Every noise, every shadow seemed to intensify their fear. In the middle of the night, the living room door slowly creaked open. They all looked, paralyzed with terror, as Isabel's figure materialized in the doorway. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice a whisper filled with pain. "You need to leave." Mike, trying to stay calm, asked, "What do you want from us?" "My death was not an accident," Isabel replied. "I was betrayed and murdered. My spirit cannot rest until the truth is revealed." The group realized the only way to escape the house was to help Isabel find peace. They decided to investigate further, looking for clues that might clarify what really happened. Exploring the attic, they found an old diary. It belonged to Isabel. The pages were filled with accounts of her secret relationship with a man her parents disapproved of. In the last entry, she described a planned meeting with him, where she intended to run away. But the meeting ended in tragedy. According to the diary, Isabel was lured into a trap by her own brother, who discovered the relationship and, fearing scandal, decided to resolve the situation brutally. He murdered her and made it look like an accident. With this revelation, the group felt a new urgency to help Isabel. They took the diary to the local church, where the priest agreed to hold a ceremony to try to free Isabel's spirit. That night, with the diary in hand, the priest prayed for Isabel to find peace. During the ceremony, Isabel's presence was felt once again. "Thank you," she whispered, her figure becoming increasingly translucent. "Now I can rest." With those words, she disappeared. The atmosphere in the house changed immediately. The feeling of oppression and fear dissipated, replaced by an almost palpable calm. The next day, the storm had passed, and the road was clear. The group left the house, relieved to have helped Isabel and eager to return to the safety of the city. The friends would never forget what they experienced in that house. The weekend meant to be restful and fun turned into a terrifying ordeal that marked them forever. And so, in the darkness of the night, they learned that ghosts among us are real and that some souls just need a little help to find peace. After returning to the city, the friends often gathered to discuss the events they had experienced. The ordeal brought them closer, but also made them more cautious. Every unexpected noise or moving shadow brought back memories of the haunted house. Julia, who had seen Isabel first, started researching more about paranormal phenomena. She became a scholar on the subject, seeking to better understand the world beyond ours. Lisa, in turn, lost her skepticism and began to believe that there was much more between heaven and earth than we could comprehend. Mike and Jake, who had seen the trip as an adventure, now viewed the world with new eyes. They knew they had witnessed something beyond the ordinary, something that would change their lives forever. The stories of Isabel and the mysteries of the country house became legends they told their children and grandchildren. Years passed, and the country house was eventually demolished, replaced by new construction. However, the rumors of hauntings did not completely disappear. Some locals claimed to hear whispers at night or see a misty figure in the distance. The group of friends moved on with their lives, but they always kept the memories of those terrifying days. They knew that, in some way, they had made a difference. They had helped a lost soul find peace, and that, to them, was a comfort amid the terror they had faced. And so, the stories of ghosts among us continue to be told, reminding us that the unknown may be closer than we imagine. The friends' experiences in that country house serve as a reminder that the world is full of mysteries and that sometimes it takes a small act of courage to bring light to the darkness. One night, years after the events at the country house, Mike received a mysterious letter. The envelope was old and yellowed, with handwriting he didn't recognize. Opening it, he found a single sheet of paper with a handwritten message. "Thank you for helping my daughter find peace. May you always be blessed." There was no signature, but Mike knew exactly who the letter was from. He felt a shiver run down his spine, a mix of fear and gratitude. He kept the letter in a safe place as a reminder that the ghosts among us are not just stories of terror, but also of redemption and hope. The friends continued to meet, reminiscing about the experience that had united them so deeply. They knew that, despite all the fear and uncertainty, they had done something good, and that certainty stayed with them for the rest of their lives, a constant reminder that even in the darkness, there is always a light waiting to be found. Julia, who had become a scholar of the paranormal, decided to write a book about their experiences. The title would be Ghosts Among Us, Real and Terrifying Experiences. With the help of her friends, she collected every detail of the events, including the emotions, fears, and discoveries they had made along the way. During her research, Julia discovered more about Isabel's brother, whose name was Henry. He had lived the rest of his life with the guilt and shame of his act. Reading old letters and documents from that time, it became clear that Henry never forgave himself for what he had done. Julia decided to include Henry's story in the book, highlighting not only Isabel's tragedy, but also her brother's pain and remorse. She hoped that by telling the whole truth, she could bring a little more peace to the souls involved in the tragedy. When the book was published, it received a lot of attention. People from all over the country sent letters to Julia, sharing their own paranormal experiences. Some of these stories were equally terrifying. Others offered comfort in knowing they were not alone in their supernatural experiences. Mike, Jake, and Lisa felt immense pride seeing the story come to life through the book. They knew they had lived through something extraordinary, something that touched the depths of the unknown. And now, with the book's publication, they could help others understand and face their own fears. The book's success also brought a new perspective to the group of friends. They began giving talks and participating in paranormal conferences, sharing their experiences and encouraging others to explore the world beyond ours with respect and courage. One of the most emotional moments happened during one of these conferences when an elderly woman approached Julia. With tears in her eyes, she revealed that she was a descendant of Henry. "Thank you for telling my family's story," she said. "It has brought peace to many of us." From that moment on, Julia and her friends realized that their journey was far from over. There were many mysteries to explore, many stories to be told, and, above all, There was a world full of lost souls needing help to find peace. And so, they continued their investigations, always remembering the first experience that had united them so deeply. They knew that no matter how scary or unknown the path might be, there would always be a light waiting to be discovered. At the end of each day, as they gathered to share stories and laughs, they knew they were making a difference, and that even among ghosts, there was always a place for hope and redemption. On one of their future investigations, the group came across an even older house, known by locals as the Shadow House. They decided to investigate, driven by curiosity and the quest for truth. Arriving at the house, they noticed the atmosphere was like Isabel's house, dense, oppressive, and charged with a strange energy. As they explored the dusty, decaying rooms, Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "There's something here," she said, looking around. Mike, holding an old candelabrum, lit the way ahead. "Let's stay calm and keep going," he suggested. Climbing the creaky stairs, they found a locked room. With some effort, they managed to break the door open and discovered a room filled with furniture covered in white sheets and a large, ancient mirror on the wall. Julia, curious, approached the mirror and, wiping the dusty surface with her hand, saw a figure behind her. She quickly turned, but there was no one there. "I saw something," she said, her voice trembling. "In this mirror." The friends gathered around the mirror, trying to see what Julia had seen. Suddenly, the mirror began to glow faintly, and a whispering voice echoed through the room. "Free me." The figure of a woman appeared in the reflection, her face marked by pain and suffering. "My name is Helena. I've been trapped here for centuries." Mike, with courage renewed by their previous experience, asked, "How can we free you?" "You must find my ring," Helena replied. "It was hidden in this house by the man who cursed me. Only with the ring can I rest in peace." The group immediately began searching for the ring, turning over every corner of the house. After hours of searching, Jake found a small wooden box hidden under a loose floorboard in the attic. Inside the box lay an old ring with a bright blue stone. Julia took the ring and returned to the mirror. "We found it, Helena. What do we do now?" "Place the ring in my hand in the mirror," she instructed. Julia did as she was told, and as soon as the ring touched the glass, a bright light filled the room. Helena's figure smiled and slowly disappeared. "Thank you. Now I am free." The group felt the atmosphere of the house change instantly, the oppression and fear giving way to a sense of peace. As they left the Shadow House, they knew they had made another significant difference. And so, with each investigation, Mike, Jake, Lisa, and Julia continued to help lost souls, bringing light to the darkness and discovering that even among ghosts, hope and redemption are always possible. Thank you for listening to Ghosts Among Us, real and terrifying paranormal experiences. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more spine-chilling tales, please subscribe to our channel, Echoes of Darkness Tales. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment with your thoughts or any personal ghost stories you'd like to share, and ring the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new story. Your support helps us bring more eerie tales to life. Stay tuned, and remember, the darkness may be closer than you think.